Hello, this is Dr. Dustin Broomball with a video for EDA 604, Organization and Legal Aspects of the School Principal. Apologize for last night if you tried to attend our go-to meeting. As you could easily tell, had some absolutely horrible technical internet issues. It was going to keep happening. It had happened all day. Things appear to be a little better today, though, but I do apologize for that. Not the first impression that I wanted, but I'll move on. So, as promised, got up early this morning to try to go ahead and get this class, what we would have done last night, try and get this video out to you. So, a few housekeeping things that I wanted to go over before we go over some content. First, real quick, a little bit about me. That way you can at least know my perspective about my past and all that. I used to be a middle school math teacher. Then I was a principal for 4 years after that. And then I'm just beginning my fourth year as the Director of Human Resources for Madison County Schools. So my goal ultimately and through this course is to give you a very good foundation and a lot of knowledge about how schools and school districts are organized, and then many of the legal aspects of the various things that you either need to know very well or at minimum at least be aware of and know how to easily find it in the school principal role. So use my perspective and the resources that I put on Moodle site here to hopefully make you very knowledgeable and aware of some of the different aspects that you'll need to know. A few different things. Make sure as I'm doing this video, it is Friday, September the 9th. I try to remind everyone, I've done through email already, is your paper number 1 is due this Sunday, September the 11th. Don't read too much. Don't make it more difficult on you than it needs to be. The minimum expectation, obviously, is under week 3 of the Moodle site here. Read both of these articles right here. Read them both. Obviously, it's talking about mission and visions and the statements about those and how they're quality and things like that, how to make them of quality. Write a 2-page reflection. The minimum expectation is that it be 12 font, double spaced, and APA format. In the past, I've had a lot of students who do not accurately follow APA format, especially when citing, so please be careful on that. But 2 pages or more reflection on that, and upload that right here, no later than I guess 11. We'll say 11 p.m. On Sunday, September 11th. If you submit it as long as it's submitted by sometime on Sunday, you'll be fine on that. I hope to grade those very early into next week. A couple other things. I know here in a few weeks you'll have to do a couple principal interviews. I hope to have those questions out soon, and there'll be a few of those that you will need to do on interview questions you'll need to come up with on your own. So some will be expected, the same questions for everyone, and then there'll be a handful that you'll be expected to ask your own questions on them. You're going to interview 2 different principals. I prefer one of them be someone in your building, if that's not possible, at least someone in your school district. And then the other one, I've told you guys a couple times of pick a high flyer, somebody that is just either for a fact or you hear a lot of people say that they are just a complete star of a school leader, of a school principal, and use me as an excuse in completing the assignment to get a little FaceTime with him or her and pick their brain about why people seem to value and why they are successful in leading that building. Like I said, use the class as an excuse. Most principals that are high flyers, in my experience, want to help grow and help develop other potential principals. And if you use the excuse, so to speak, of hey, I hear how great you are, and you feed their ego or you give them a pat on the back type thing, most people, if they can find the time, especially if you plan ahead a little bit, they're going to make the time to give you 20 or 30 minutes of FaceTime to do that. So like I said, use me an excuse. Go pick their brain. We'll see what makes them tick, what makes them so valuable in that school setting. And then lastly, the final exam. I'll post toward the end of the semester, but it's worth I believe 50 points. Don't stress over it. It'll be an open book, open note. You'll be able to use all the resources here on Moodle site to answer the questions type thing. It's a lot of this content you'll be expected to maybe just memorize, but I also think a lot of it you might not necessarily need to memorize, but be able to easily find it. So some of these links and different things might be something you save to your favorites or something on your computer. So, okay, so now for the to review the weekly objectives for week 3 here, and then I'll spend a little time going over it. So, how are districts organized first? Districts are organized a little bit different all over the state of Kentucky. You have, depending on the size of the district, ultimately, you have campuses that have, preschool through 12th grade right here in Madison County. Berea Independent School District, just a little south of us. It's equal to our smallest high school, their entire district. They're all on the same campus. You have preschool buildings where all of preschool go to the same place, all of kindergarten go to the same place. There's the early learning village, I believe in Jessamine County has that kindergarten all in one building. Here in Richmond, we have Madison Kindergarten Academy at Mayfield. For the most part, all of the kindergarten students go to one building. Obviously, you have your K5s or 1 through 5s. You have your 6 through 8, grade 6 through 8. Junior highs, it used to be called years ago. Now it's probably the common lingo is middle schools. You have your high schools in 9 through 12. You have some 6 through 12 or 8 through 12s. You have some freshman academies of just ninth graders. You have your vocational tech schools. Once again, also like up in Scott County, how they have I don't know how to describe that school. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but they have a lot of technology, legal classes, culinary type things all under one roof to meet the college and career readiness. So as you can tell, and you probably already knew, districts are organized tons of different ways in the public school setting, just depending on the size of the district or the how big a school is. I immediately think of where my wife grew up in Pike County. Used to be a very populated district, but it's very spread out. And you have elementary schools that might only have one class in a grade level because it'd be more efficient to combine some schools. But since it's such a large square mileage district, you can't combine too many elementary schools because you'd have a kid on a bus for 90 minutes to go to one school. So as things change, people adapt, but it's organized in different ways. How are human resources allocated within the structure? This is what I'm about to go over in a little bit of detail. So first, how are they allocated? First, we need to know, at least, the example I'm going to show you, and every district has it. Sometimes it's difficult to find, but if you ask the right people, you can determine how are the staffing allocated. So I'm going to start off. This is one of the documents that's under week 3 in Madison County Schools for certified employees. For kindergarten, there's one teacher for every 24 students in that building. Primary, there's one teacher per 24 students. They take first, second, and third grade. They add up all the kids, divide by 24, and then we do round up. So if it ends up being, first, second, and third grade, we add them up, divide by 24, and it's 9.3. We typically give the whole, round up to the whole 10th teacher. Fourth grade, one teacher for every 28 students, and fifth grade, one teacher for every 29. As you can tell in our elementary schools, no matter how big it is, they get a principal, counselor, library media specialist, PE teacher. You notice this note here, if it's under 350, they're not a full 1.0. It'd be a 0.7 where they would work about 3.5 days a week. And a music teacher. Most of these in our district, at least, they're 1.0s across the board. In our middle school, a little bit, for the most part, it's the same, except for they do add an assistant principal in the middle schools. And their cap is they take the entire student population, add it up, and divide by 23. You might be thinking, well, why would they do that? Um, your class sizes are smaller. Well, remember up here, we added some of, we would call those your related arts or your specials already of your PE teacher and your music teacher and stuff like that. And here, those are not added. So you're getting some extra teachers out of that for your specials, for your PE and your music and your technology teacher, whatever that school council chooses to utilize that with. And then our high schools, for the most part, it's 23 to 1 as well. There's a few exceptions here. And then obviously there are a lot larger buildings. A principal, uh, every every single one of our high schools has 2 assistant principals, guidance counselors, 1 for every 500 students, and 1 media specialist. And that covers that for certified. For our classified, all right, we're not taking into consideration any cooks or any of that, but this is the school council allocation. So this is how we determine the attendance. 1 hour with enrollment of 300 or less, an additional hour for each 200 students. So a school of 500 would be allocated about 2 hours. This is per day for an elementary or a middle school, for attendance purposes. So this might be, in our district, many of them are an aide or para, I guess I would call it, and they might spend part of their day as a para, part of their day as the attendance clerk, depending on the size of it. So most of our schools get about, they're a little over 500, so they might get about 3 hours a day toward attendance. And basically, that's a form they come up with that says that if they focus on those duties for that length of time, depending on that number of student population, they should be able to effectively handle those duties during those 2 or 3 hours a day. The cafeteria, this is cafeteria monitors and aides or pairs, not cooks. Instructional assistants, computer lab help, kindergarten aides for those that have kindergartens. So basically, if they're a whole day kindergarten, they're going to get a whole day kindergarten aide or para with them. And it talks about our secretaries and bookkeepers here as well. So you can tell a lot of these high schools are weighted a little bit more because they have a lot larger population. Custodial staff in our schools are as such. I'd say most of our elementary and middle schools have usually about 3 custodians, some about 2.5, depending on the size of it. But it's basically a formula that it depends on the population and it depends on the square footage of that school. And you can review these documents if you want. So every school district has something like this that they put their own touch on. This is just an example again of how Madison County handles it. Okay, so what do we end up doing with all this? I'm about to show you. So in Madison County, we usually sit down with, I guess the principals sit down with myself as the Human Resources Director, and a couple of our assistant superintendents and our actual superintendent, Mr. Thomas. And before, we have 2 different meetings, usually one in March and one in early April. And prior to the March meeting, I meet with each principal, and this is just the elementary one. And me and that principal go through all of their current certified and classified staff to make sure that we have accurate information. Everybody that we have record for is on the right seat of the bus, so to speak. Ms. Jones currently teaches 1st grade. Mr. Reynolds teaches 3rd grade, things like that. And we go through one by one and review them. And I get with that principal, and together we make sure that their staff lists, both certified and classified, are correct. Make sure that no one's missing, that we've overlooked someone. Every building, they'll have people on leaves, whether it be maternity leave or medical leave or whatever. We make sure that we've identified them, because even though they might not be at work right now, they're due a job unless we notify them appropriately. And then maybe at times some people have already resigned or have retired, or we're pretty sure are going to retire, just haven't maybe notified them. We don't ask for final decisions at that time. And remember, this is during the spring prior to the school year. Maybe I should have prefaced that a little bit more ahead of time, but this usually happens in February is the discussion I have. In March, we sit down with the actual school district leadership, and then again in April. But we're making plans for the following school year. So imagine it's a springtime. It's just coming February, March, April of 2017, and we're getting ready for the fall of 2017. It's kind of how this will work in 6 or 8 months. That time we're not looking for a final answer, but ask that principal or anybody on their radar that are looking to maybe non-renew based on their performance or based on the funding. I'll get back to that here in a minute. And then obviously this is a little old here with the date here, but we just identified the staffing that maybe are not allocated by the school council budget based on board allocated. Schools get different title funds. Did they employ anybody using title funds? In our district, we have, especially in our elementary schools, reading recovery grants or reading to achieve grants or math grants. Basically anybody that's employed that's not employed, they're employed with funds besides what the school board is allocating. So some schools might have gotten a reading grant, a math grant, or used title funds to employ extra people, or Section 6 funds. I know I'm using some lingo at you, but this is all going to make sense here in a minute when I come to an actual example of a school. Then we look at aids for individual students for special education. The reason we bring that up is maybe Mrs. Smith was an aide for a student in 3rd grade, but you know what? That 3rd grader moved. Well, maybe we don't need that aide anymore. Or maybe that aide is a 5th grader that works with that student due to their IEP, and they're about to be in 6th grade next year. So maybe we need to look at moving that aide to another building. So we kind of look at all these scenarios to try and think of every scenario ahead of time. That way we have all the information as accurate as possible in front of us before it comes time to problem solve and soon make decisions. So this is just more of a problem solving checklist to make sure that all the information is to the forefront. And I work through each principal as a human resources director. That way the first meeting that we sit down, once again, it'll be the principal. If they have an assistant principal, they bring them with them. Human resources director, couple the district leadership people, and then obviously the superintendent. We all sit down in a meeting. Usually takes 30 or 45 minutes, once in March, once in April. And April is usually the final decision of all these things that we talk about. And we go through these a fine-tooth comb together. So an example of one of these. All right. So this is an example of Kirksville Elementary School in our district. Basically, at March the 1st, they're required by law to go over this at March 1 and to give each school council or school principal one of these. So in this past year, the March 1, this allocation was given to the Kirksville principal and school council, and they basically made a best projection of how many students were going to be in that school, which you can see is 580. How did they do that? Well, currently Kirksville is a school that's grades 1 through 5. They took all the students, grades 1 through 5, and moved them up to grades 2 through 6. Obviously, the 6th graders went on to the middle school, and then the kindergarten students that are at our kindergarten academy, they get those numbers from there of how many kindergarten students are coming, and basically move everybody up a grade. You have there's going to be people move, and there's going to be people come in, but for the most part, you're going to have a pretty accurate estimate of how many students are coming. Don't get too confused on all these section numbers. Basically, when I'm going through them here in a moment, this was based on this past year, how many teachers in the building and all their salaries added up. You don't really need to worry about that. Your school board will take care of that. Your section 5 is basically your classified employees. Take all the salaries in the building, add them up. This isn't anything that you really need to monitor. This is just something that in your finance director or whoever does that in your district, they'll monitor that. Now, section 6 is a little different. What happens is based on your enrollment and your estimated average daily attendance from the year before, they take that number. So basically, 95% of 580 is going to be 551 students. They take that average daily attendance and they multiply that by the amount they're going to give per pupil, per student. And that will be the money that you'll have to run your building for supplies, materials, travel, equipment, you name it, there it is. So Kirksville right now, they were estimating at that time to have a little over $76,000 to help run their building. That's not for salaries, remember. All the board, we're about to go through them here in a moment, but the school board is going to give, they're going to pay for the ones that they allocate certified and classified. You could employ extra people if you chose to, using this money if you wanted, and we'll talk about how that works sometimes here in a moment. But this figure is not a fixed number. I believe right now the lowest that a school board can appropriate for that is $100. I believe this is the maximum right here. I can't tell you I know exactly the finite how they come up with that exact figure, but some school districts give the minimum of $100. Right now in Madison County we're in good financial shape. We try to give, or at least our superintendent and our school board tries to give them the schools as much money at their disposal to use for helping kids, whether it would be with supplies or extra people, as much as possible. But that's a school district decision. It does change year by year. There was at one time I think like 120 during maybe a more difficult financial year, but this year, based on that number and based on the maximum amount right now, that school, Kirksville, would have a little over $76,000. Section 7 is you can make requests for extra funding that the school board allocate to you on top of the allocation. This has to be a request, doesn't mean they have to honor it. You can tell right here that they're not getting a whole lot extra on top of that because I think our school board is choosing to go about it by giving them the money, at least at this time. And there's the grand total. All right, the staffing allocation. So based on the numbers, here are the numbers in primary of students. Remember, primary is first, second, and third grade. The number of fourth graders that they're expecting at Kirksville, the number of fifth graders they're expecting at Kirksville, and special ed. And this specific school has an FMD, functional mental disability unit in their building for around 580. I think, yes, that matches the same exact one. You can tell here I'm clicking on the tabs at the bottom. So when you crunch, if you go back to our allocation form a little bit ago, primary is taking that number divided by 24, and I got 12.67. Remember, we round up to 13. So right now, Kirksville should have expected going into the school year to have 13 teachers in grades 1 through 3. In fourth grade, I expected to have 126 students divided by 28, gets you 4.5, and round it up to 5 teachers. 141 students in fifth grade divided by 29 students, gets you 4.86, and then round it up to get 5 teachers as well. You get 1 principal, 1 guidance counselor, 1 PE teacher, 1 music, 1 media specialist, and then based on their population, remember, based on the population, it said 0.1 art teacher for every 100 students. So since they're expecting 580 students, here, yes, 580 students, they rounded that up and gave them a 0.6 art teacher. So that's where they come up with that. Likewise, based on the allocation formula that we went over and classified, this school's getting about 3 hours a day for attendance, about a whole person 7 hours a day for cafeteria. That means they have to use them for 7 straight hours in the cafeteria, or maybe that's 7 hours. That might be 2 people spending 3.5 hours in the cafeteria, or 3 people spending an hour and a half in the cafeteria. But it's up to that principal and that school council to utilize those. And then an aide for 7 hours a day, so pretty much a whole person that's just used on just instruction. You get a computer aide that works in our computer labs, 1 secretary, and 2.84 custodians. We usually try to round that to the nearest hour. So there's probably, I would assume right now, probably 2 custodians working 8 hours a day, and maybe 1 that's working 7 hours a day. Almost 3 full people. Just one of them's not working a full 8 hours every day. Still considered full-time and get the health benefits and all that, but that's how that comes up with, and that's based on that square footage at Kirksville Elementary School. So certified, just another way to view pretty much what we just talked about right there of the number of teachers. Same way for classified, the number of secretaries, aides, things like that we just reviewed, and then these last two tabs are the ones that help. So as we just talked about, this is what they had, all right now, and I took the names out and just called them teachers this way. Remember, right now, they are expecting 23 teachers. Remember, 13 in primary, 5 in 4th grade, 5 in 5th grade. All right, so how many teachers? That adds up to 23. When we go over here to the certified list, I need 23 for this coming year. But look, all right, and then let's see, but they're saying that they can get 25.6, and that's based on some of the grants. Let's see, where would that be at here? It's based on some of the grants. To try and throw a curveball at you, this school has a reading grant and it has a math grant and different things like that. So basically, the bottom line then is, and these are probably the most two important pages that we spend a lot of time when we go over these allocation meetings. This school right now has 28 teachers, but based on the projection, they only need 25.6 for next year. So they are currently, for next year, overstaffed by 2.4 teachers. What does that mean? Well, unless something changes during that spring significantly, this school is going to either need to do one of a couple things. One, let someone go. Two, is anyone retiring? Three, do they want to use some of their underfunding that we talked about, like Section 6 funds, to pay for any of this? And this, this principal probably when they got this news, they probably knew it was coming a little bit. Maybe the population has decreased a little bit for whatever reason. Different things like that. Maybe they were just slightly, maybe the year before, 10 kids in one grade level change doesn't sound that significant, or even 5 kids. But maybe the year before it was a I don't know, a 4.1 teachers, and we rounded up to 5. But this year it's a 3.9. They lost 8 kids, but those 8 kids meant that it lessened the population of teachers they needed by 1. So right now they would be losing 2.4. Remember, I already talked about the principal and I sat down and identified maybe teacher 4 is gonna they've already submitted retirement paperwork. Okay, well that decision's made already. That makes it, all right, they only need to figure out what to handle for 1.4 teachers. Maybe you've hired somebody that's non-tenured and probably would needed to go anyway. Maybe teacher 20 just, you've worked with him or her and they wasn't cut it and you were going to non-renew them anyway. But regardless, the superintendent at the April meeting is going to want their recommendation. It's the superintendent decision still, but their recommendation on 2 of them. In this scenario, one of them may have been decided for the principal because they were already retiring, and they would let this one go. So there's 2 people that one retiring, one that you're going to non-renew, pink slip, whatever lingo you want to call it. That puts you down to a 0.4, and maybe this principal wants to use Section 6 or Title I funds to pay for the other 4/10. So they get 1 principal, 1 library media specialist, and 1 counselor based on the allocation. And then in this school, they sit down, usually one of our assistant superintendents and our special ed director, they look at the population of students coming to them next year to identify how many special ed teachers they need based on their IEPs and things like that. In this specific school, they obviously needed 6 teachers. One of these is an FMD teacher because there's an FMD unit in this specific school, though. All right, Title I. Basically, we're a Title I district. This specific school met the threshold to receive Title I funds. Usually during the meeting, and I'm not talking about it in this class, so to speak, but usually one of our directors gives the principal their anticipated Title I budget. Right now, since this school has a a reading grant. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but has a reading grant that were awarded by KDE for a reading interventionist for 2 years. And part of that reading grant is the state will pay for, they'll give an amount of money to pay for pretty much one teacher, but the school has to agree to pay for, in this one and a half teachers to match. It's kind of like we'll give you a free gift if you will match it, so to speak. So in this specific school, it's not like many of the other ones, but they agreed that if and they got awarded the grant, that the state would give them one grant, all right, and to get the grant, they agreed that they would purchase one and a half people to do the same thing. So this school's using title funds to pay for that teacher, and in return, they're going to get paid for. I think you see balance from Section 6. It may have been something like the grant was worth $50,000, and based on the salary and benefits and stuff, maybe this teacher cost $52,000. So where's that $2,000 come from? Well, the school has agreed to use their Section 6 funds. Remember, this money over here that we talked about, maybe like $2,000 of that to pick up the little bit of a difference. All right, and then this school also has a math interventionist. Our math grants basically work that there's no requirement to get matched, but they were awarded one. A little bit of a balance you can see is paid from Section 7 funds, meaning if there were a little bit, in these cases it's usually minimal, sometimes not at all. If there's if the person's salary goes over what the grant is, our school board has agreed to pick that up. I don't think in this building the teacher does not make enough money that takes the entire grant. That's why you saw Section 7 earlier was $0, at least the year before. So that's how this works. And like I said, I go over all this as the Human Resources Director with the principal the first round, just to basically get all the information, identify people that might be on leave. Actually, this specific school has had somebody on leave. Maybe it was teacher 17 was on leave, and then it would be the principal and my job to reach out to that person and to get the information from them. Maybe they're going to go ahead and retire. Maybe things are better and they do plan to return. So we have to figure out, and they're a tenured teacher, we have to make sure and plug them in a hole here. Well, then in the case that 2.4 would really have turned to 3.4 or something. So fine tooth comb, identify all of the situation, take the population and the allocation formula and crunch the numbers, so to speak. So same thing with classified. The schools do one secretary. Here are the different aides and pairs they got. So this year they had 3.5 and they are needing 3.5 moving forward. Custodians, remember I said 2 of them work 8 hours, maybe one of them works 7. They have 3 hours right now. All right, but the allocation's only requiring 2.9. So there would be probably not a lot of money, but there'd be discussion on who's going to fund that 0.1, that 1/10 of a custodian. It kind of depends on the school board and the superintendent. Sometimes the superintendent might be like, hey, no big deal. We'll go ahead and we'll pick it up. Sometimes it might mean, hey, we have to, Dustin, you're the Human Resources Director, get the paperwork together. We need to reduce this custodian down to 7 hours or something. So kind of a case-by-case basis. Based on the student population coming, I told you about the special ed teachers. Well, this is how many of the special ed pairs that are needed. We do have a preschool in this district, or in this school. So they have a preschool para and another one that's part-time. This principal in the past has chosen to use their Title I funds to pay for one more para. Once again, doesn't have to, but maybe the principal decided, you know what, I don't want to spend the money on that para anymore. Well, then this would be a case where we would be letting a para go somewhere. Maybe the principal doesn't want to let this one go. They want to put them up here in this vacant spot that's the special ed one, and just not purchase a Title I. You have your family resource centers, and then your cooks, at least in our district, and I believe it's most, it's not really a school council decision, but based on the number of lunches and breakfasts they serve and the student population, they get so many hours of help. this, at least in our district, we help oversee this, but the food service director monitors this a lot more closely. So there is an example of how it's allocated. I have put other examples up of high schools. Our largest high school, Madison Central. Very large enrollment. You look at their Section 6 funds based on that enrollment and the amount they get per student. They have $250,000 in their Section 6 funds. So obviously a lot bigger population. You get a lot more staff and a lot more buildings. I mean, this high school right now is, projected to get, let's see here, you know, 81 teachers. And you can tell with the 81 teachers that they have, based on the population, it's increased. That's a negative -0.1, meaning they get one more teacher based on what they already have. Maybe someone was retiring, someone was has already resigned or whatever. That would just be even more teachers that they would end up hiring. If teacher 77 is retiring, well, then that -1 turns to -2. So they have two teachers to hire, or maybe there's somebody that needs non-renew based on their performance or whatever. But I've given you examples of on the Moodle site of an elementary one, a middle school, and a high school one. Please take a look at these and look through them. It's not anything you need to memorize, but it's not uncommon for a brand new principal who's never been a principal before to get these, and they feel a little overwhelmed because there is a lot of information on there. My goal was to at least give you a look inside of how a school might be allocated. Once again, it might be just a little tweaked, a little different, or look a little different in each school or each district, but at least you get a good foundation, hopefully, to see that. If your head's spinning a little bit, trust me, it's not uncommon because there's so many different funds and numbers of teachers, and maybe your district, we do 24-1 for elementary and primary. Maybe your district does 25-1 or something, but there's a little bit of a tweak, adjustment from case by case, school district by school district, but depending on what that school board and that superintendent has decided and put in place moving forward. But there's an example of how it's allocated. As you watch this video, if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to discuss any about this on a GoToMeeting that actually works. A phone call, email, whatever works for you, works for me. Please, I promise, do not hesitate to ask. I'll pull up the syllabus here real quick. There we go. Just want to put my email address up there. If you have, you want to make any phone calls to me, please don't hesitate. I promise you're not bothering me. I want to help you. So let me get my email address to come up here. All right, here we go. So once again, on the front page of the syllabus, here's how the best way to get a hold of me is going to be the best one. I check this quite a few times a day. Please let me know how I can help you. I hope you found that helpful. Once again, apologize for the technology issues that we had last night, but this was what I was going to go over anyway. I would have liked the opportunity for some of you all to ask questions, but I'm going with Plan B here, and at least giving this information out to you. At least I guess in this method you can watch it more than once and rewind if you need to. But I'll finish up by saying please let me know how I can help you. I hope you found that beneficial. Thank you.